Hello and welcome to Scanners Here to Help podcast. I'm here with San Juanita, we call it affectionately SJ. And we're here to talk to you about Hispanic Heritage Month that we celebrate September 15th to October 15th. So we want to have a conversation. And I guess the main focus is to talk about the strengths of the Latino culture. And then we're going to get a little bit into parenting practices and a mix of things. So we're going to mix it up a little bit. So welcome to the podcast, SJ.
Thank you, Mr. Flores. Thank you so much for having me here.
Yes,
yeah. Thank you.
And I guess we can begin by letting us know which program we're going to focus on. And then we're going to address Hispanic values or Latino values. Okay.
Yes. So again, my name is San Juanita Guerra, and I work for SCAN's Border Project Launch. We are a federally funded program that focuses on the well-being, the overall well-being of young children. We focus on children 0 to 8. We have multiple services that serve such population, and of course their parents, their caregivers, as well as educators. So we have an array of services from therapy to parent education sessions, trainings for the community. And so we are very, very excited to be able to take a moment and place an emphasis and highlight, celebrate, and honor Hispanic Heritage Month. The population that we serve here in Webb County is predominantly Hispanic,
95%.
95%. And so, and of course, we have others that have joined our community. And there are other times of the year where we honor those communities as well. But this is a special time. Of course, as Hispanics, as Latinos, we love to celebrate. Yeah. So being given 30 days to honor our culture and our communities, well, it's a big deal. So we wanted to take a pause in our very fast-paced lifestyles to celebrate that and to honor that. And within that, what are the strengths within our community, sure, as well as, when it comes to the work that we do within Project Launch, how that relates then to parenting and how we're raising our future generations. Exactly. Yes. of Hispanic children.
And when we talk about Hispanic or Latino, we know that we're talking about many different groups. Here in Webb County in Laredo, Texas, the majority of us are Mexican American, but we know that there are many Colombians, Puerto Ricans, Central Americans, South Americans. So we know that we are a diverse group, but at the same time, we share language and we share common values that I think that apply across all ethnicities. Yeah.
So one of them is, like you said, language, right? We speak Spanish. Of course, every Hispanic country or Latin country has its own, whether it's its own terms for certain things or slang. But we do share that common bond that we're able to communicate with each other, sure, so easily that way. And it's something beautiful, something that I know that I emphasize, for example, with my child is, her being very, very in tune and familiarized with the Spanish language, right? Because it is not only part of her heritage, but also it's a benefit, right?
Yeah.
For our children to be bilingual, trilingual in some cases. What a benefit in life, and what a gift we can give our children for them to have mastery
Yeah.
of multiple languages.
And I was thinking about that many parents who migrated to the United States, maybe they want the kids to learn English. And because the emphasis is so much in getting acculturated to the culture, sometimes the language gets lost. And I think that is really a strength that kids learn Spanish at home, and they can be fully bilingual, and they can have also that pride of knowing their language and their ancestry.
Yeah. Exactly. And again, for their own future, right? Their own benefit as well. And so those are also other ways of, again, honoring that culture and our people, who we are, right? Not forgetting who we are and where we came from.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what are some of the strengths or traditions that you celebrate in your family? What are some of the things that we can talk about some of the, in your particular case?
Well, for me, when I think of my community, my culture, which is my family is all from Mexico, both on my mother and my father's side, and my husband's family as well. When I think of the Hispanic Mexican community, I think color. I just see a lot of vibrant color. And I think all of those colors represent a lot of life, amongst our people. Life in terms of a lot of celebration, coming together. So, the idea of family, that the importance of family has a value, always coming together in the good and the bad. It's not just to celebrate birthdays or weddings or other traditions, but also in hard times, as Mexicans, and this is something that's coming up soon, we celebrate Dia de los Muertos, celebrating and honoring death, right? Not many communities around the world do that. And so we put out, this big celebration with altares and food and music and, again, remembering the dead. And honoring their lives and what were their favorite things.
Keeping them present in our lives.
Yes, keeping them very present, very alive in us. And so when I think of my heritage, that's what I think of. I think of a lot of color. And within that comes other things, art and jewelry making and literature and poetry. Music, of course. You can't live without the music, right? Our traditional, regional musics from different parts of Mexico. So all that comes to mind. And it goes back to when we have any type of gathering or celebration, all those things come together, right? Yeah. The way we decorate, the food that we're going to serve, the music, the entertainment, it all comes together. And so when I think of my heritage, I think of that, especially the food,
And when I think about, because I was born and raised in Mexico until I became 20 years old, and then I came, been in the United States longer than in Mexico. But what comes to mind thinking about Mexican American culture, I think about faith. I think about faith. I think about spirituality. I definitely think about family. Things that come to mind is closeness, is sharing, because I think that we have a celebration is not only the nuclear family, is the extended family, and then others, whoever, everybody's welcome, donde comen uno, comen dos, that type of thing. So sharing, definitely music, celebrations, Independence Day and so forth, Christmas, definitely. So Dia de Reyes, and so then there's a lot of different things. But I think that the thing that reminds me the most is connections and closeness with others. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, definitely. Again, going back to what you brought up in terms of spirituality. For many of us, we were raised within, a specific religion. I personally was raised Catholic, and going to church, and then again those holiday traditions that included the church, right? Whether it was midnight mass at Christmas, that's a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
One very unique celebration that's kind of close to Christmas is El Día de la Virgen de Guadalupe. So there's a whole
Yes.
tradition, procession, if you may, around that holiday. Very important, and it'll involve dance and music and food. Matachines, that's a huge part of Mexican history, and of course the story behind this specific virgin, right? And Juan Diego and all that, and so again, growing up with all of these things, you become then a parent. And a part of you is like, I cannot wait to pass this on to the next generation and expose them to that, for them to experience that. So I think that's a big part of heritage, whether it's Hispanic heritage or any heritage. It's that desire, that feeling, in some cases that commitment or even obligation to pass that on.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think the challenge is how to pass that on. So then our children can keep that, and because that can be a protective factor for them. But I mean, I think it is also a pull to become more, Americanized, and sometimes we may lose that.
Yeah.
So just the importance of preserving that, and that can be really beneficial to our kids, knowing where they come from, adopting the values. I think there's a pull to become more oriented to the needs of the individual instead of the needs of the family and the community. And maybe we can instill that in our kids. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, I don't know if there's anything else that you want to talk about in terms of, this Latino culture that
Well, I think for me, like I said, it was that it's this is a special time of the year. But and we always highlight all these beautiful things of our Hispanic communities and cultures during this time of the year, but also to keep it alive throughout the rest of the year, right? Every time there's an occasion, and just really being proud, right? It's also a pride thing, being proud of being part of this community, being part of this history, being part of these people, right? Yeah. And so just reminding, folks that even though it's these 30 days that we really emphasize this, but it's throughout the year, it's throughout the year that we have, again, so many reasons to celebrate. And again, the emphasis on, passing that on to the next generation. And of course, that's in itself a challenge, right? Because parenting alone is so hard, right? When I work with caregivers, when I work with parents, they often come to us at moments where they are at their wits' end. They are exhausted, they're tired, they're overwhelmed. And I say, you know what? You're doing the best that you can with what tools you have, because this is really hard. Yeah. So if we add on top of that, passing on traditions, and all this, it might be a big ask to make of caregivers, but it's just, it can definitely be an opportunity to bond with our children as we pass along these traditions. So I do want to place, go in that direction in terms of, parenting. This is a tough job.
And you made me think about the challenges of parenting and this culture, because we are in a way connected to the culture because we have so many Hispanics here. But people in other communities that may be isolated, maybe don't have contact with the community. And even us, that we are close to Mexico, but we're not in Mexico. So we are connected, but not as connected, but there's a pull to be part of the U.S. culture. And I think parenting in that context, where parents are stressed out about a lot of different things, and then they're a lot of times not thinking about culture. They want the kids to succeed. Maybe they're thinking they need to learn English, they need to adapt to school. So may not be paying attention to preserving, the values because of the stressors that you were talking about. Parenting in itself, but besides other things that are happening around in their families.
I can definitely relate to that. I'm first generation. And so my parents immigrated here from Mexico. I was born in the United States, but everything at home was Mexico, language.
They brought Mexico with
Yes,
them.
they brought Mexico with them. Language, expectations, tradition, food, and so, like you said, maybe here in our local community of Laredo and surrounding areas, we may not feel that so much because we're the dominant community in that sense. We're the majority. But I that's a great point. What about families that might immigrate to other parts of the country?
Yeah.
And they are not. They really are the minority. And, it's difficult to find their foods. It's difficult to find a radio station that plays their music. You know what I mean? So I can't imagine being in that position as a parent where, yes, you come to this new place, this country, and what do you want? Of course, you want your children to succeed.
Yeah.
And so, yes, it may be where these things having to do with culture and tradition kind of get put aside in an effort to acculturate and adapt and succeed.
And to belong to the host culture.
Right.
And I think that, and I just want to touch briefly on it, that in many areas, speaking Spanish may be, not looked favorably, that they may be embarrassed or not speaking the language. So they may be parents, because they love the kids, they want them to succeed in this new culture. They may want them to really learn,
immerse themselves
in the culture and be successful in this particular culture, and maybe at a cost sometimes. They didn't know about what I needed at certain ages, and because they come from rural areas, and so they brought their own parenting practices that they learned from their parents, and they think they worked. One of them was, and I'm sure that if you encounter this, that one of them is the use of physical discipline.
Right.
Yeah, that they think, well, this is the way that I was raised. At least I was raised that way too. With physical punishment, and I know that they meant well because they wanted the best for me, but I know that it was not the best of practice now. And now we know that there are a lot more effective methods that can cause less damage. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yes. So, speaking of culture, and for those of us that are of Mexican heritage or Mexican American backgrounds, we have this running joke or myth, if you may, fable in our community, which is La Chancla. And, I've even seen funny videos about this on YouTube and stuff. But for many of us, it was our reality growing up when it came to the physical consequences that parents used to impose on their kids. And to be honest, many still do.
Yeah.
Many still do, because again, parents today are working with what they know. And what they know is how they were raised, right? Many of us were, given such consequences when we were kids, right? Whether for some it was la chancla, for some it was the belt, for some it was a firm hand, and you got hit, right? But now, and yes, you're right. I'm certain that my parents didn't know also about child development and how children think, or reasons for their behaviors at times, whether it was them being disobedient, defiant, aggressive.
Well, they saw it that way, but I mean, let's say, for example, the toddler, right? Sometimes they want to explore. They're not being disobedient. So then, how do we help parents understand, what needs at what time, what kids need at what age stage, exactly. And we can give it to them. But I mean, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
So you were talking about that.
Yeah. And so, so that's one thing that we are still seeing. It's a lot of parenting that is based on how they were raised. And something that I always tell caregivers, because sometimes there is a lot, even though it happens, even now in households, there's still a lot of, shame and feelings of guilt behind that type of discipline. I tell them, you know what? This is the hardest job you'll ever have. Nobody at the hospital, when you took your baby home, gave you a manual that said, okay, you're going to follow this to the T, and this is how you're going to raise this particular child. No, that would have been lovely, right? And so we're working with what we know. And that's where, services like ours and programs like ours and agencies like ours come in to say, okay, that's okay. You can't know what you didn't know, but then how can we then support that, right? So a lot of it is awareness, right? Just a lot of awareness, a lot of education, a lot of information. Information is empowering, especially to parents that are really struggling. In terms of just saying that, whether it's education on child development, a toddler is not doing things to be malicious. They're exploring, they're testing limits. They are, still struggling with language.
Learning how to
They're
regulate
learning
their emotions
how to
also.
navigate, life and, regulation of emotions. They just don't have that yet. How do we then guide the child so that the parent also experiences less stress? So a lot of it is that, right? A lot of education, a lot of information. And then the other one is actually teaching techniques and strategies that sometimes work, sometimes they don't work. They're not going to work on every child, but they're worth the shot, right? Whether it's the way that we speak to the child, the way we respond to the child's behavior, the words that we use when we are giving a child a command. I mean, there's so much that as parents, we can just, little things that we can tweak that could really make a huge difference in, one, our connection and our bond to our children. Two, how we are raising the children and teaching them, whether it's how to regulate emotions, coping mechanisms. Oh my goodness, if there's one gift we can give our kids is the gift of them knowing how to cope with life, because stressors are going to come in every direction when you least expect it. And then obviously also how to reduce, again, parent stress. I'm very big on reducing parent stress. Because if you have a clearer mind, you're bound to make better decisions when it comes to your kids.
And in terms of emotional regulation, if we as adults are dysregulated, meaning that we're irritable, we're angry, we're stressed, then it's going to be really hard for you to be understanding of the child's behavior. Is to be compassionate and to do the thing that, that is the most effective, because you are overwhelmed. And then it's in those moments that I think that it is a high risk for parents to do what they saw during their childhood, instead of applying what we think is the best way of treating kids.
I mean, at the end of the day, we're all human. We're all human. We have our limits. Some of us have less limits than others. I hear from parents, say things like, ay, es que me desesperé, perdí el control, ya no sé qué hacer. So all these very human emotions,
because
right?
parenting is also tough, like you mentioned earlier.
It's really hard, and I think that's one of the messages that I really want to convey to caregivers out there, and when they come into our office is, let's just put one thing on the table right off the bat. This is hard work. If somebody makes it appear less than on social media, that's just a snapshot of people's lives. It is not the full reality. And so, parenting is difficult. Even for those of us doing this line of work, it is difficult. It is challenging. Children are going to go through their own experiences, their own, processes in life and things that they confront. And so it continues to change and evolve. When you think you've mastered something, you're like, okay, I think I've gotten a hand on my 3-year-old. They turn 4, and then it's a whole other situation. So, but going back to, really being able to hold our traditions high, but also keeping did it.
Yes. And I'm sure that they bring in a lot of really positive values, like we talked about the need for connection, that the being around the extended family, being around, padrinos and madrinas, and celebrations and all of that. But at the same time, I think that there are some ideas and some habits that we got into because of our own upbringing that it's hard to stop. At least I done many parenting training, and when I try to give my first presentation, I always encounter some kind of, I don't want to say resistance, some kind of doubt that maybe sometimes we need to set limits with physical punishment, and that is changing those ideas has been challenging for me, because I think that they in our one of the values that we expect, I guess, from our kids is this respeto, respect. Mm-hmm. So sometimes we misunderstand behaviors, and then we think that the only way to achieve respeto, respect, is to set limits with physical punishment. So that has been one of the challenges, and I know that we need to be patient with parents because some of this information is new and goes against what maybe is maybe generations they have been practiced.
Yeah, that's another thing. I continue to bring up the word honor, and so that's one challenge when we're doing this work is honoring that parent's, that caregiver's history, right? Because their history is what's going to dictate or lead how they now make decisions in their life, how they go about their work ethic, and of course, when it comes to children, their parenting. Absolutely. I mean, it's one and the other, right? So that's one thing, not to come out strong and say, oh, well, that's wrong.
Because you're going to lose them.
Yes, you're going to lose them. It's more about, okay, you're working with what you know. In other words, your toolbox right now has these tools. Are you okay with adding to that toolbox so that you have other options, right? When it comes to dealing with these situations with your kids. And then you, depending on the situation, you can dig into your parenting toolbox and take out the tool that is going to work best for this moment, for this job. So a lot of it has to do also with that, right? Our approach. And just like that, then we teach parents about the approach with their kids. Yeah. And that even though they may have more than one child, you're probably not going to use the same method with every child, right? Because they're all different. They all have different personalities, different temperaments, and different ways of seeing.
Yeah, and how to give each kid what they need, because they're so diverse, and we need to respect each kid, how they are, and value them as they are. But we have a kid that is, may have an easier temperament, and then another one that may be more active, and one of them that cries more. So then one that is, just sits there and reads a book and is, like that all the time. So then it's how do we understand and value each kid and love them the way they are, but understanding that each child needs different things, different approaches, and how do we give them what they need?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So, and in that sense, going back to, really providing parents with information that's empowering is, the idea that you don't have to be equal with your kids. It's about being equitable with your kids, right? Again, what you just said, giving each kid what they need, meeting them at their level, not, everybody gets exactly the same, because not every child is the same. So it's about, meeting the needs of each child and meeting them where they are. So again, just wanting to really, really emphasize to parents and caregivers and educators as well, because of course they deal with our kids most of the day during the week, is, to really, really honor and appreciate the tools that you have, but at the same time, being open to more information, more opportunities to learn other ways of managing certain situations, and then at the same time, without abandoning or pushing aside your own
Well,
traditions or history.
I think that you already have what it takes. You love your child. We just want we want to teach you what science is the best way going about it and making sure that your child develops in the healthiest way possible. And some of the things that you may have learned may have worked for in other contexts, but we want to tell you what we call best practices, and this is what we want to make sure that you have that leap of faith and that you try these things. And one of the things that I know that information is important, but one of the things that we found out that is a lot more important is practice. Because I know that we teach parents, especially in PCIT, and it's a type of therapy that we use to practice the skills, and we make sure that they master the skills before they can apply them with their kids. Yeah. So practice is important.
Practice is important, absolutely, because then again, you want to be able to raise your own confidence that you are, applying these new skills, these new tools, strategies well. And then, of course, that they work on your child. It doesn't mean that every, evidence-based method is going to work on every child. Once in a while, we come across that one child that is like, none of this is working. We got to try something different, something else. And that's okay. And so, yes, absolutely. It's not just about getting information and being open to that, but then what do you do with that, right? You got to put it into practice.
Yeah, because when you're stressed, when you are overwhelmed, when you're what we call defensive, because you have a lot of things on your plate, it would be hard for you to be thinking, what did the counselor tell me that I need to do? Because you are in a state of mind that you're in survival mode. So then be patient with yourself. So that's why, and I'm glad that you mentioned that. The most important thing that we want to help you with is to be calm, and the way that we can do that is to show compassion to you and understanding what you're dealing with in order that compassion can be transmitted to your kids, because that is going to be really important. Helping parents be calm when they parent is going to be one of the most important things. And then from there, we can, use all the skills that,
remaining calm is one of the most important things, but it's also one of the hardest things to do when you're in that moment with your child and the child is, get thrown on the floor because you said no more snacks because it's almost dinner time and your child is on the floor crying in hysterics and you have just reached your limit. But if a parent or any caregiver can get really good at, remaining calm, being in the present, doing those breathing exercises, not only is it helpful in the situation as you are trying to deal with your child and have a teachable moment with your child, but what an example for the child in terms of self-control, in terms of regulation, in terms of not making things, bigger than they maybe have to be. So we definitely want to keep that in mind as well. Children learn by modeling behavior. So if you're able to model these healthy ways of, coping with situations, of managing situations.
And other thing, thank you so much for saying that. But also at the same time, if you were overwhelmed and if you used a chancla or you yelled and screamed, and you were able to calm down, you can always reconnect with your child. You can always say, mommy was tired or daddy was tired. I shouldn't have yelled at you, but what I wanted you to do is this. The reason that I did that is because of this. Right. So then there's a way that we can, again, go back to the culture and reconnect and maintain the connection, because I think that's the most important thing for the child is to know I'm loved by my parents.
Yes, that reconnection, going back. Because again, all a child really wants to know and feel is that they are loved, that they are wanted, that them having made some mistake that upset you doesn't equal them being less loved by their parents, right? So being able to go back and say, hey, look, when things are calmer. Yeah, mommy, daddy, we're upset. We probably shouldn't have yelled. We probably shouldn't have done that. Next time, we really need you. The first time we tell you, we need you to do this, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But no matter what, we love you.
Yes.
We love you unconditionally. Nothing's going to change that. And
Yeah.
just being able to provide that reassurance for the child.
And they can see that you're on process of regulation because they can see, the kids can see that.
You are.
And they know I can experience emotions, but as symptoms, I can hold them, and then I can be calm. So we can explain that to kid. Mommy was going through a really difficult time. I yelled at you. I took some time to calm down, and I'm feeling better. And I'm sorry that I did that. I still want you to pick up your toys or whatever it is. So that the command can still be there,
right?
But we can say it in a different way instead of yelling or whatever it was. That caused that. So be compassionate with yourself. I think that's one of the things that I will tell parents, right?
Yeah.
Be
kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Be forgiving of yourself. If you feel you did make a mistake, we're going to make mistakes. Parenting is full of them.
Sure.
Yes, be compassionate, be kind to yourself. And something else that we always bring up with caregivers is self-care, right? Always don't forget about yourself. Sometimes we get so caught up in just doing for our kids and being there for our kids and doing right by them and meeting all their needs. And where do we get left, right? Where do we stand? What about us? Mm-hmm. And so that's another thing, because then something that I have seen with caregivers, especially if it's the primary caregiver, is then something that creeps up before we even know it is feelings of resentment, right? That, well, what about me? And what about me going, and having a moment to myself or just having 5 minutes of privacy? And so we don't want situations to get to that point,
Sure.
right? Because that's not a good feeling. That's not a good feeling, especially if it's towards your children or towards your partner or, other family. Because again, it's not something that's going to bring us to more positive parenting. It's just going to go negative. And so self-care and be kind to yourself.
Yeah, and that's maybe challenging for some parents, because I know the parent may want to take some time to rest, and maybe mom, and
Yes.
Those demands never change. But, reach out for support. And maybe with a counselor, you can figure out a plan, or you can reach out to extended family, or if you are alone in this community because you migrated, then there may be other ways to support that. But yeah, self-care is going to be extremely important. Let me check with our director, producer, IT person, Lisette. How are we doing with time?
We're over 40 minutes.
We're over?
Okay. We're 40 minutes.
Okay. So then should we wrap it up already? Or?
Good. Yeah. Can you just mention the giveaway, the gift card?
Yes. So then one of the things that we're doing is that to make sure that people watch this podcast, which I think has really valuable information, that we are given a gift card. I think it's $15 or $25, something like that. And it is an HEB card. It's a local grocery store. Well, actually, you know what? It's going to be only for people in this community, because last time we had somebody from out of town watching it. So this gift card that we're going to give, it's for anyone who's watching the podcast in Webb County. And so then there may be some things that they can identify. We didn't do that in the middle. But maybe if you can let us know at least 3 things that you learned from this podcast, and then you can submit it through our Facebook page, or we can go to our website and submit it through email with your name. Make sure that you liked already our Facebook and Instagram pages. That would be a requirement. And then we'll give you that gift card. This is only one gift card for the first person who responds with 3 things that they learned from this podcast. Would that be okay with you?
I love it. I love the idea of that. Yes. Let us know. We obviously take that as feedback as well, right? That not only that folks did listen in or watch, but what they walked away with from this conversation. So.
Well, we want to thank you for sharing this time with us. And again, we're so proud of our heritage, and we want you to be proud of your heritage. And I don't know if any last last words that you want to say. Ms. Jane?
I echo what Mr. Flores said. It's a month of pride. It's a month of celebration, but it doesn't just have to be to these 30 days. Let it be all year round. Fill your life with all of the colors of our community and our culture. And of course, for the caregivers and the parents out there, the educators out there, if you are in a situation where you feel you could use a little extra support, guidance, or help, please don't hesitate and give us a call, and we'd be happy to provide you with some well deserved and well needed guidance.
And to close, be kind to yourself, be compassionate to yourself, and hopefully you can join us next time in the next podcast.